Good morning, and thank you for joining. Thank you for joining us for our Agile Leadership Workshop on the journey from doing Agile to being Agile. Our speaker today is Paul Ellerby. He's going to take us on this journey. And Paul, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Well, thank you. Good morning, everybody. I've been in this Agile business since the late 1990s, and one thing that's really important to me is having conversations with people. Conversations, I think, are really key to any good implementation, whether we're using Agile or not. So one of the strange things about webinars is I have no conversation. This is just one-sided, and I apologize for that, but there's no way of fixing that. However, I do encourage you to type questions in the question window if you have them, and at the end of this, I'm expecting to do about 30-35 minutes, maybe a little longer, and at the end of that we will answer as many of those questions as we can, so please feel free to type questions at any time. So we're going to look at a couple of things today. Speed to value, that is, how can we get faster and, more importantly, better at developing software, the software that's really needed out there. And also, what tools are out there to aid us in this, and what should we really consider when we're looking at tools? Can these tools help us in our Agile journey? I'm assuming that everybody on the call is already using Agile techniques and is having some level of success with those techniques. What I really want to talk about is how we work more in an Agile way, or more importantly, in an adaptive way. How do we change our organizational norms? What do we need to change in our culture to really take full advantage of these techniques and these approaches? First of all, let me talk a little bit about value and why it's important to be fast at delivering value, especially external value to our customers, but also internal value to our team. It's important to keep those people engaged also. If we look at the S&P 500, or right to today, from when it was from 1958 to today, you'll see that one company in every two is now replaced. I'm sorry, one company, not in two. One company is replaced every 2 weeks in the S&P 500. It's really a very rapid change. 75% of the S&P 500 will be gone from that S&P 500 in 15 years. Maybe you're not in the S&P 500, but this is really illustrative of how quickly change is happening. The rate of change around us, as we all know, is just incredible right now. Something that I'm sure I don't need to tell anybody on this call. Interestingly, I find this interesting, that the companies who have left the S&P 500 are the ones we think of as the big, solid companies. Sears, for example, New York Times, one of that's near and dear to my heart, Kodak. I used to live in Rochester, New York, and I remember when Kodak was the dominant employer up there. And now, well, they're in bankruptcy, I think, or just brought themselves out of bankruptcy. Very sad. And all of the companies on the left-hand side are fairly new. Netflix, interestingly, they're in trouble, I believe, in the S&P 500 because their revenues are staying flat. Hopefully they'll stay. Family Dollar, an older company, but moving very much in line with technology. E-Trade, of course, Comcast, some of those companies who also move fast. A couple of interesting statistics here. I want to raise a couple of interesting companies. One company, Pinterest, they had 500,000 users in May 2011. They had 12 million users in January of 2012, all driven through technology and delivery of software that people wanted to use. A huge, huge increase in their customer base in a very short time. And the other one is Groupon. Groupon raised their revenue to $700 million US in just 2 years in business, which I think is quite impressive, especially when we compare it to companies like Amazon and eBay, two huge companies who we think of as really moving very rapidly. It took those two companies 5 years to get to $700 million. The rate of change in delivering this value is huge, very, very important to us right now. So here are some things I've found that slow down organizations in delivering this value. And many of these, most of these, in fact all of these, are internal. They're cultural. They're things that we just do and things that we need to change. One is being in control. We have this great belief that management needs to be in control. Management are the smart people, and most of the time this is true, of course, but We can't control everything. If it's one person making these decisions, it's one direction. It's that person's opinion. Also, one person tends to be a bottleneck. How many of you are really tied up every day making decisions on things that you know mostly about, but you could do with some direction on? If you're making decisions in that case, maybe you should get some advice, and we'll talk about how we get that advice a little later. So one person can be a big bottleneck in an organization, but it's something that we're taught to do right out of college. Next thing is something that is important to me that we get away from, is the big design document. The spec will tell you what's there. I've told you, just go and read the spec. That'll tell you what we need to do, right? But how long ago was that spec written? And how old is the idea in that spec? I'm finding that specs typically take 3 to 6 months to write. That means that they're already out of date once they're released. One of the very first things we do after we finish writing a spec is get sign-off by the business. The next thing we do is put a change control procedure in place, which tells me that the ideas contained in the spec are wrong or potentially wrong, and we need to put procedures in place to admit that they're wrong and get us moving in the right direction. I just don't think that's a very good way of running a business. Here's a controversial statement. If you just spent 3 months perfecting a spec and then it doesn't meet the business needs when we start delivering the software, you've wasted 3 months not only of your life, but of your team's life, and more importantly, your organization's life. You've wasted 3 months, a very long time in business these days. Don't get me wrong, there is value in documentation, definitely value in documentation. However, make sure you're writing the highest value documentation you can find, not low value, big documents. Maybe a better way of doing this is to write a very small, very fast 2-pager and then go write some software. See if you really can validate what you've written in the spec. Keep the specs as small as we can. So how are we going to break these habits? Just 3 simple ones there that I think we all face. Well, take yourself out of control. And sorry, not out of control. Take yourself out of the control seat. Really work with customers, work with the business, work with your teams to see what they are thinking, to see where they're going. Let me give you an example here from an ex-colleague of mine, a very good developer in the legal publishing world. She was approached by a small medical company here in the Twin Cities. I'm in Minnesota, by the way, and there's snow on the ground. But she was approached to come and join a medical insurance company. She had no experience of that business, but what they wanted was her ability in development and in agile techniques. But they really impressed on her. What they wanted were people who were consumers of healthcare, not people inside the industry. And she rose to prominence in that company by giving them common sense advice on what their product should look at, and by forming panels of other healthcare users, not professionals, to help them develop their products. Very, very successful and a very fast moving company. So they went to talk to customers, they went to talk to the business, and they went to talk to the team. They were trying things all the time, and they were validating that against their customer base, and indeed against people who were not their customers. So try something. That's one thing that we need to really, really start doing. The other thing is about our team. I stole this from Daniel Pink, or I borrowed it from Daniel Pink. He believes, and I believe also, that there are 3 factors that lead us to be motivated as individuals and certainly as teams. That is autonomy. I want to be able to make decisions. I want you to trust me enough that I am making the right decisions, that we're doing the best for the business, and that we're being smart about it. So this is the old empowerment routine. Okay. The second one is mastery. I really want to understand what my domain is, what technical excellence I can bring, what business excellence I can bring, really master my domain, be the expert that I can be. And the third one is purpose. Why am I here? What's really going on? How am I going to affect the business? How are we going to drive more business? And how am I going to keep this company moving forward? How am I going to keep my team moving forward? These really map very, very nicely to some Agile principles. Autonomy really means self-organizing teams. Let teams organize the work in the way they know is good, they know is the best. They're really on top of the work that needs to be done and on top of the team dynamic. Let people use that experience to really help deliver software, deliver product. The team can be very, very powerful, and we need to keep it moving. We need to trust the team. In terms of mastery, this really comes down to technical and business excellence. I'm sure those of you who are running or working directly with development teams understand that most developers, most testers, most analysts really want to be at the top of their game. They want to stay up with modern technology. They want to use modern tools. They want to use modern techniques. Let's give them the power to do that. Let's really enable our teams to go and be the best they can. And the third one is purpose. This really is product visioning. As I was telling you about my ex-colleague, a company approached her from outside the industry she knew about, but nevertheless brought a lot to that industry. So this is the real product visioning piece of Agile. Very important. What's the best product we can make, and how is that relevant in the world? So let me talk a little more about those. This slide you cannot hide. Don't hide from the business. Don't hide from our customers. This is where we need to engage everybody and collaborate with everybody. Not only customers, but also business. Not only business, but also customers. Those two can be in conflict. Think about the way your organization interacts with your customers. And by customers, I mean people outside your organization actually paying you money. Do you have program managers or product managers in place whose job it is to interact with those people on a regular basis and then bring back answers to the development team? Those guys are playing telephone. They talk to customers, they accumulate the information, they give you, your development team's information on what their perception of the outside world wants. They also do it the other way. They take information from the development team and share it with customers. Whenever you got one person around there, you got a potential bottleneck. Remember I had that slide earlier that said about one person being in control? This is exactly the paradigm we're trying to break. So think about collaborating across the organization and with your customers, and then put those two things together. So if we think about collaborating across the organization, how do I get testers working directly with business? How do I get my developers working directly with managers of other organizations? How do I do that? Indeed, how do I break down those silos so that my developers and testers can work together, can sit together, and can communicate together every day? Those of you who are using offshore organizations to do testing or to do development and have those not only organizational silos, but time-boxed, time-boundary, time-zone silos, you must find this very, very important. It's really critical that we break down these silos and get people in our organizations working together. So BAs or analysts and developers working together in real time. Testers and developers working together in real time. Analysts and testers working together in real time. Very, very important that we do this. And then let's take that one step further. Let's get these teams who are now collaborating across organizational boundaries and really focused on delivering software. Let's get those guys working directly with our customers. Is that possible? That's a huge, huge cultural shift. I recognize that. But just consider how you might be able to do that. Maybe we need customers who have signed non-disclosures or trusted customers to come and help us develop this software in the right direction. Also doing this sends a couple of very important messages. The first is, I want no more heroes. I don't want anybody coming in as normal working practice on weekends at midnight and working on their own and never being available to work with the team because they were a hero to put out some fire, to save some issue. Still important to do that, I recognize that, but that should not be a normal way of working. Team focus should now be a normal way of working. The second message is, I don't want any one-person teams anymore. Yeah, we get some skunk works, but share that information with other people. Share it with people in the organization and ask other people for help on these products. If you're overworked, you should be asking for help, not becoming the hero. Again, a huge cultural shift. Second concept here is design in public. Those of you who have UX organizations, you may already be doing this. If you're using an outside agency for your UX work, your user experience work, this is going to be difficult for you. But have your partner or have your internal UX organization design things in public. Put them on a whiteboard that everybody in your organization can see. Why? Because people in your organization understand your products, understand your business, understand where you're headed, and will make suggestions. The idea here is to have fast feedback on any design decision you're about to make. By the way, this does not just apply to UX. This also applies to technical design, to architecture. Have people share that long before we go down the path of putting this in place. What we're trying to do here, what we need to do here, is change the whole culture of we're specialists, we're going to do our thing and give you the results, to opening up the design effort to get fast feedback. We want the whole organization giving feedback on these things and using or asking intelligent questions about why we're doing it that way, making suggestions for doing it potentially a better way. This could threaten some people you have in your organization right now. It's very difficult to shift from a closed environment to an open, collaborative, feedback-driven environment, but very important to do. I also want to get away from this concept of we have to get things right the very first time. Remember all of our quality training we went through? Get things right the first time, do it right the first time. I just don't believe in that anymore. Interestingly, I had a chance to work with W. Edwards Deming some years ago, and he didn't believe in this either. This was one of the principles he railed against a lot. It's not about getting it right the first time, it's about getting it right quickly. So, Deming and I agree on this one. Dr. Deming and I agree on this one. I followed him, I must confess. Try something and fail. One of the things he used to say was, if I don't fail, I don't learn. And this is very much a key element in lean software development. Indeed, in lean manufacturing also. If I don't fail, I don't learn. This doesn't mean you fail all the time, of course, but don't be afraid to try something as small as you can, get feedback, and learn from it. We need to experiment, we need to get feedback, and we need to improve. We can get feedback from our internal business, we can get feedback from our internal team, but the real feedback comes from our external customers. We need to show these experiments, these things, to our business. I talked earlier about product managers and how important they are. I'm sure you have product owners also. The key here is I want to break down this silo between the business and the development team, or business and technology. I'm afraid we're in this together. Business now is not your customer. The business must be part of the team. They must be integral to the development team. If they're not, we're really delaying this feedback loop. And feedback loops are critical in the Agile process. We have to do that. By the way, you should, at the very least, be showing the business what you've done so far in every sprint and every iteration at the end of that sprint. If you're not doing that, you're missing a really critical piece of the Agile development cycle. Those of you who are doing this, great. I know I'm preaching to the choir, but this is really critical. But what if we change that to having the business see this twice a week, every day, every couple of hours? Wouldn't that increase that feedback cycle and give us a much, much richer product? And then show it to your customers. Again, huge cultural issue, I know. We probably need to break down a lot of barriers and put some legal protections in place. But people are doing this now. If we think of Google, I mentioned Google earlier. They do this very quickly. So Pinterest do it. Real feedback is critical. And we can only get this from customers that are going to be using our product. I know I just mentioned a couple of high-tech companies. I personally know of one company in the medical healthcare industry who is doing this. Before they go and develop a product, they come up with a very lightweight working model and present that to their customers. The customers either like it or they don't like it. If they don't like it, they kill it before they spend $1 million on the project. I think that's outstanding. I don't want to spend $1 million, so let me kill it early. I think that's success. Once we've done this, we're going to get feedback from the customers that says, I would like A or I would like B. I would like more functionality here. I want to deliver product based on that feedback. What functionality do you need? Let me give you a real life example here. I don't know how many of you use Google Mail, but it's becoming pretty much the go-to product for startup companies and for indeed large companies. When Google Mail was first released, you could do two things with it. You could send email and you could receive email. There was nothing else that the product would do. Google wanted to try it out, see if they could get into that marketplace and if there was a role for them. And they found that people started adopting it quite well. And then the next feature they developed was based on customer feedback, not on the development teams, not on internal studies, not on internal opinion, real customer feedback. And they've developed that and continue to develop that product based on this customer feedback. It's a very big success for Google, and as a user of Google Mail, a huge success for me and my organization. Let the customer guide your development efforts. Don't think you know everything. Key internal message here. Keep the team moving forward. Don't take these long 2-week, 2-month review cycles to determine if we're going to do something new with this product. Google do it. Facebook does it. Everybody now is in this cycle. Everybody, not everybody, but high-tech companies are in this cycle of coming up with an idea and putting it out there very quickly as they can. Nothing kills an organization and nothing kills a team more quickly than stopping, taking a pause, and then coming back later. I want to keep delivering products that are successful. I want to keep delivering little things to test the market, and I want to deliver quickly. I want to deliver often. I want to deliver well, and I want to learn. Keeping this movement going is what makes teams highly successful, makes organizations highly successful, and that makes management organizations highly successful because they have the vision to do something different. Progress is really critical here. Now, how about this? We're not just an IT organization anymore. We're solving business problems, and we solve it with working software. Indeed, we are the business. We are as integrated with the business from the technology side as anybody. We're as critical as finance, as HR, and we have to be, therefore, at the core of that business. Technology is really driving businesses forward now. We all recognize that. But that means we can't have this divide anymore between business and technology. We're either in this together or we're not. And if we're not, I'm afraid that's a problem. What we've got to have happening here are testers working with customers, developers working with the business, analysts working with product managers, developers becoming proxy product managers where necessary. What we want to do is build very effective, very fast-moving teams. And I want to focus on effectiveness of those teams, not on the efficiency of those teams. The old metrics of how many lines of code, how many bugs are we finding, while useful, should not be the primary drivers anymore of success. It's how are we delivering value? How often are we delivering value? How often are we delivering things that our customers need rather than how many lines of code did you write? How long did you spend in the office today? We really should get away from that. I want to talk a moment about culture and how this really affects organization. And I wonder where your organization fits in this culture quadrant. I have borrowed this from a book called The Reengineering Alternative, written by William Schneider, quite an old book. It's out of print now, but it's a short read, and I really recommend that you take a look at this if you have that possibility. So Mr. Schneider says that there are really two different axes of business. The vertical axis is how we relate to our customers. The top point, reality, indicates that we talk to our customers a lot, we collaborate with our customers a lot, and we respond to what they're requesting. At the bottom of the axis is what he terms possibility. This is, we're going to invent something new. We're going to invent something that's not out on the marketplace, so I can't talk to customers about it because nobody knows about it yet. An example here is an iPad, for example. If 10 years ago you'd have gone out and asked customers or consumers, do you want an iPad? They wouldn't have had any idea what we were talking about. And now they're ubiquitous. They're everywhere. Everybody seems to have an iPad. On the horizontal axis, we talk about how we as an organization now are really organized, how we form, how we will use our people. Do we rely on our people to really drive, really understand our customers, really understand our business, and drive this forward through an atmosphere of collaboration, through working together, through being creative and being dedicated? Or do we fall to the right side of that axis where we rely much more on the company? The company knows what is best. Here we tend to have a lot of rules, we tend to have a lot of processes, a few experts that really drive how the company is working. That results in, of course, 4 quadrants. Collaboration is where we have real partnership, not just within our teams, but across the business. I really value diversity. I really value diversity of opinion, not just the physical diversity that we're potentially used to here, but diversity of opinion is important. This is where we need to cooperate with each other and where we need to feed on each other's organization and get rid of these silos. The lower left-hand quadrant, cultivation, is where we're making this stuff up. I can't go and collaborate with my customers all the time, so I have to collaborate within my organization, which means we have to have faith in our products, faith in we know what we're doing. We might have some failures, but there'll be small failures, but we'll come up with the right thing in the end. Again, experimentation is important here, and as many experiments as we can get out there as soon as we can is important, and this is why we need to trust our teams to do the right thing. But we also need feedback from the marketplace. On the top right hand, we have what is called the control process, the control quadrant. This is where we succeed by keeping control. It's important to talk to our customers, it's important to collaborate with our customers, but when they come back with ideas, we have processes around how we get those ideas back. We have processes in how we put those ideas into our product. We have standardization across our customer opinions so we can try and pull out the right things. And we have what we need is predictability. Predictability is a big issue for many companies, and something that the more companies I hear saying we want predictability, the less I believe it's possible to get it. And then down at the bottom, the 4th quadrant, is a competence culture. This is where the company knows best. It knows all of the ways of running the business. Our executives are experts in this. Just do what they tell you, and we'll be great. Really focused on efficiency. And by the way, we're making this product up. It's something that's not in the marketplace. So if you have very tight processes and it's a product that is not in the marketplace yet, we tend to think of this as a competence company. So I wonder where you are in your journey. It'd be interesting to see where you put your company in this and your organization in this, because the company focus and an organization focus can be different. I wonder if your company lets you be different in your organization. I will say that the organizations that are leaning in, much more to the people side of the horizontal tend to be more successful in their Agile adoption and tend to move more quickly in their Agile adoption than organizations on the right-hand side. Not saying that if you're on the right-hand side you can't do this, you can, but you just may have a lot more people to persuade before you can keep going. So I want to change focus just a little bit here. I've been talking about 30 minutes, and I want to take a few minutes to look at tools. Lots of tools out there, and I want to look at how we use those tools, and more importantly, can I lead the change to being a more agile organization as opposed to just using agile approaches? First of all, I want to just come back to the value thing I talked about earlier. In the old world, our measurement of value was, can I deliver a project on time, on schedule, and on scope? That was the measure of success of a project. Yeah, so that's how we delivered value to the client. Now I want to change that, and this is from Jim Highsmith's work, that those constraints of cost, schedule, and scope are just mere constraints. Very easy to say. What I really want to change my focus to is value of the product. Is this what my customer wants? Is this really the best thing? And if it's what my customer wants, how can I monetize that? How can I make that effective so that I make some money? We're all in business to make money. And the other thing is looking at the quality side of it. This is internal value, if you will. What is the quality focus around this? If you're making a heart monitoring device, you probably want very, very strict, very high quality standards. If you're selling pizza online, your standards are probably lower for quality for your website than a heart monitoring device. So make sure you really look at the right level of quality for your organization. Quality is expensive, but it has to be the right value of quality. Oops. Now let's look at some of the tools themselves. Keep the tools as simple as you can, right? Don't go and spend a lot of money on a tool when you're not ready to. So this is really answering my question. Can tools lead us in adopting Agile, of becoming an Agile organization? I don't think they can. I think you can really use them, especially if you have an organization that is distributed geographically. Using a whiteboard, difficult for a distributed team. However, what I want you to look at here is make sure that we're measuring delivery of value, not necessarily how many lines of code or those more traditional things. And do that as simply as you can. Whiteboards are great. Whiteboards are really a good tool to start with. Not sure of the process, not sure how we're going to get this thing going yet, so let's keep the tool as simple as we can. So I like whiteboards, I like stickers, and I like people talking about these things. And let your delivery teams really help choose the tool that you're going to use. If they decide that the right thing is Post-it notes on a whiteboard, then stick with that, even if you're distributed, but make sure that your distributed teams have a say in the choice of tool also. Be very careful about having the PMO or management or leaders choose the tool for the teams. Of course, we have to make those decisions when we have 20 teams, 30 teams, and they all want different tools. Somebody has to decide. That's part of leadership. But make sure that we don't choose on price, the fact that we have it already, that it gives us nice graphs on traditional measures. Make sure that we really use the tool to measure delivery of value. And also make sure that any tool you do use can be adapted to support your process. Don't get caught in, we have to change our process to suit the tool. That just is very, very bad. Make sure the tool keeps you moving. Remember I talked about this earlier, nothing really kills teams off better than no productivity, no movement forward, no progress. So the focus here is on the team, right? Not on the executives, not on the PMO, not on management, but on the team. Is the team moving forward? And make this information visible. Even if you're using a tool, get some big TV monitors and project and put this on the wall. Print some big charts and graphs from it. Put those on the wall. Very important to have open information flow. So here's some tips for picking tools that deliver, right, and help you deliver. The tool has to change and grow with your team. You may choose a tool that in 6 months or a year you decide is not big enough for us. Might have been great to start with. You might have to replace it later. If you can find a tool that can grow with you, fantastic. If you find that you have to change tools, well, I'm afraid that's the price of being in a very fast-moving, learning organization. The tool should also let your teams be different. I've never yet found an organization where two teams sitting next to each other do exactly the same things at exactly the same time or in exactly the same order, even though they might be working on the same program. So that there is always some difference between the teams. Make sure the tool supports that difference. And indeed, celebrate those differences, because that's how we learn from one another. Make sure the tool helps you build the right thing. How do I get enough feedback from my tool? How do I get enough information from my tool that I can make sure I'm building the right thing? Not merely following a process. This is not always a process. We employ intelligent people. Let's let them use that intelligence to really keep us moving. Any other tools should help you deploy fast, really fast. And so this is where we get into automated testing, where we get into continuous integration, more importantly, continuous delivery. There are a number of continuous delivery tools out there now. Will they work in your environment? Do you need to change your environment to use these tools? Or do you need to build your own? So I want to deploy often. I want to learn from it. If I'm going to fail, I want to fail as fast as I can and get feedback, and then fix that failure. Finally, I want to see something that's helping me make real progress, right? So it has to be adaptive. It has to be very, very flexible. For this last one, I find that Post-its, whiteboards, paper and pen, good old-fashioned stuff, are about the most flexible tools you can find and really don't lock you into a process. Again, you have to be careful about using that if you have distributed teams. Let me answer my question. I think I've answered it once already. Can you lead your change with the tool? Answer simply is no, you cannot. If you don't have a process already, if you don't understand what you're trying to do, and if you're not locked into this agile mindset of delivering quickly as I can, the best I can, no tool is going to get you there. It has to come from within your organization. Think again about that culture graph that I put up earlier. Where is your organization and where is your team in that organization? I'm sorry, in that culture. That's what's going to help you decide what you want to do, and that's what's going to help you decide what tool is best for you. Obviously, at Thoughtworks, we have some tools of our own. I encourage you to investigate those, but this is not a sales pitch. A lot of tools out there. Be very careful about the tools you adopt and make sure that they work for you. Finally, I want to leave you with this slide. Think of the column that says doing Agile. We're very problem-driven. We have adopted some practices. We have a project focus, and we're making some little changes, very incremental on us, right? That's a supportive culture of doing some stuff that's good, but it's really relying on the processes that are out there, yeah, to really being an agile organization. Think about delivering value. What is the value I'm delivering to the culture? I'm sorry, to the customer. What is that value? And also, what's the value internally? That is quality, right? How is my quality high, and am I meeting the appropriate level of quality? A couple of metrics around here are continuous delivery. That's a very good tool, of course, for rapid feedback. I write some code, I check it in, I do a build, I run some tests, I get feedback very quickly. And also a metric called running tested features, RTF. When I check in code, I build it, it looks good. What features does that now enable? Not just stories, but features. And how do I measure against that feature? How am I getting feature after feature after feature being delivered frequently? Or am I breaking features as I check more in? A very interesting thing that goes along with continuous delivery. Let's look at the behaviors around those. When I'm doing Agile, here's the process. Here is, I'm going to direct you to follow this process. Still a lot of control, still a lot of standardization around our teams. The Scrum book says we do this, we'd better do that. So we tend to follow very much a menu of items like stand-ups, like planning, like backlog grooming. When we get it to being Agile, we ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Why are we really using this process? What does it deliver? The focus is much more on the deliverable, not on the process. So how do we work in a team? What's our peer-to-peer network? Can I go and talk to a developer in another group about this problem I'm having? Are our teams empowered? And bottom right-hand corner, that phrase, do less, is really critical. What is the least amount of work I can do to deliver the most value? That's what I want to focus on. That, to me, is really the key of an Agile organization. Not just following the process, but how do I deliver the most value for the least amount of work? So, I wonder if that sparked any thoughts about your organization, any questions that came in. Thank you all for listening.
All right, so Paul, we have a whole bunch of questions. Are you ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. I hope I sparked some debate. That was my goal.
I think you did. All right, so the first question is, what do you think about models like BPMN for spec? It takes a bit longer time-wise, but makes complex processes clear.
I actually like models. If nothing else, they let us compare like to like and sometimes like to dislike. So if that's working for you, keep using it. But it's not the model itself that's important. It's the result. How are you getting to that value? If the model is delivering value for you, or I would guess the model itself is not delivering value, how you're using that model is delivering value to you and your customers, that's a good thing. You can tell here my focus is on delivering value, not the process itself. If you found a process that helps you do that, keep doing that. I really encourage that. But don't rely on that forever. Always look at changing a model, finding a better model, developing your own model that suits your business, your culture, where you are.
Okay.
Next question?
Next question. No worries. Next question. Can you please expand on your experience with orgs that have had tools that have led Agile? This is a big problem that this attendee is running into. We're pushing Agile by the culture and mindset is not here yet.
Oh boy, we only have 15 minutes. I'd love to expand on this. Yeah, I really do find a lot of organizations that I work with, they want to adopt Agile. They've heard some things about this good tool. They go out and buy the tool. Maybe they read the book or a book and decide that they can do it themselves. Doing it yourself is actually not a bad thing if you get help. And I'm not selling consulting services here. You can get help internally. What I find is that when people implement, speaking generalizations here, obviously, but when people implement a tool, they're relying on that tool to give them the processes. They don't really look at the outcome of why am I using this tool? Why am I following this process? What is the end result? And so the focus becomes much more on following a process than actually understanding why I'm doing it and what the result is. Let me give you a couple of examples. I have a couple of clients who are using Jira with Greenhopper right now. Not slamming Jira and Greenhopper. It's a good product. However, it does not really allow them to look at, when they're writing stories, they're having a very difficult time writing, you might consider the construct functions, functionality, epics, and stories. Greenhopper does not allow them to do that. It only has 2 layers of functionality. So they can go from functionality to stories or epics to stories and so forth. What this has led them to do is rely on just these 2 levels, right? So when they are now that they're in user story sessions, they're developing a new product, whatever it is, and they're writing stories, they go straight from, oh, I need a piece of reporting, right down to the next level. So they try and get as low as they can on their story writing. So they go from, we need some financial reporting, down to very, very detailed explanation of all of the reports with UX design, with table layouts, with everything, because the tool won't let them get anywhere else. Now with working with these guys, what I found is when, and I'm using this reporting one as a real example, what we find is we go from, I need some financial reporting, down to, oh, I need to look at how much we spend, I need to look at how much we sell, I need to look at those things. So that's one level down. And then with the I need to look at how much we spend, oh, now I've got to go by department, now I've got to go by organization, now I've got to go by, so you can see all of these multiple layers of stories, if you will, for each level of reporting. Going at it by level allows them to break down their reporting very quickly, very easily, and get to something that they can go and develop quickly that's the highest value. The tool has not allowed them to do that, and so they've been just skipping those steps and trying to get down to a very low level of detail as fast as they can, and they're not delivering because they're so focused on writing stories that they've forgotten they need to develop software. It's very sad, and I find this so often. I'm going to comply with the tool, and I forget that I have to write software, as silly as that sounds. I'm sorry, that was a very long explanation, but this is something that is very close to my heart, to stop people following this folly of just doing what the tool tells them to do. I think we can move to the next question. Sorry. I get passionate about this. Yeah.
No worries. I have another big question for you. Here you go. What is the criteria to decide to go for an agile model?
Oh boy, a lot of this is cultural, frankly, but also a lot of it is marketplace too. If you remember that quadrant graph, that 4-quadrant I talked about culture earlier, if you're inventing new products that you can't test in the marketplace easily, and if you are a very directed, company-focused organization, that is, I believe my product's right, and I believe that we have the right processes and tools and procedures and hierarchy in place, that culture is going to really slow you down in your agile adoption. If you're more on the collaborative people side of that slide, that's going to allow you much more to have this cross-organizational collaboration. That's a very good thing. So it can be cultural, but also your marketplace. If the marketplace is slow, staid, you take a long time doing things, you have no real competition, then maybe you don't need to be agile. Maybe you can just continue working in a slow, steady way. That's fine if it's giving you good return on your investment. However, if you're in a fast-paced market with a lot of competitors who are all doing new things and you need to catch up with them, then why would you not go the agile route? Why would you not look for a set of practices that will let you outpace your competitors? So 2 issues there, culture and marketplace. I find very few organizations want to stay slow. Why? Because they don't attract any new talent. They don't attract the best developers. They don't attract the best minds. So think about those things. Will your culture let you do it? If so, that's a good thing. And is your marketplace driving you into it? Because you'd better do something in the lean or agile or similar space before somebody eats your lunch. I think we have time for a couple more.
Yep. All right. How about this one? How do I explain to my team that they have to fail fast?
Yeah, that's a big culture. That's a big culture. I actually like to use very simple constructs for this when I'm explaining what I want. One that I use is this might sound silly, but if you're going to paint a room, if you're going to redecorate a room, if you go to Home Depot or Lowe's or anywhere these days, they sell these little half-pint pots of paint, and they'll color that paint any shade you want to. The idea being is you take the paint home, you put it on the wall, and you decide which one you like and which one you don't like. That's failing fast. It's an experiment. It's something that I can look at in light of day and decide which way to go. That's what I want to do in failing fast. Now, why do I have to fail fast? Exactly the same reason. I've got 3 or 4 options, 6 options, however many, and I want to find which one is the most relevant, which one is the most successful. So it's not really failing fast because it's succeeding fast, if you will. But I want to be able to rule out all of these options and take the best option I can. That's what failing fast is all about. And I find that teams get it when you put it in simple terms like that.
That's
okay,
a great,
one more, Rebecca, if you could.
Yes, one more. That's a great example. How do you introduce Agile to a team which manages many legacy applications but does a small amount of greenfield development?
That's a classic question. That's actually probably the hardest case of all to introduce Agile. However, I like to introduce it at its most basic. And I like to think about if I'm going to do this, I want a couple of real principles here that I'm introducing. One is working as closely with the business as I can, so that I want to develop a piece of software, show it to the business quickly. Is this what you meant by that fix? Or if there was a bug in the legacy, I think this is what you told me, but I just want to make sure. So communicating with the business as frequently as I can, and then when I make a change to the software, showing it them as quickly as I can. And the second thing is using a storyboard or some sort of tool to look at what's in the pipeline so that I can look at my work. So as an individual, I want to know what work is coming up. I want to know what work is interesting. And I'd like to be able to choose my own work. So even though it's legacy stuff, a card wall or a tool that simulates a card wall will let me do that. So a lot of this is about understanding what I have to do as well as I can, and then when I've developed something, show it to the business or to the customer as soon as I can so that we're on the right page. It's really about fundamental understanding of the work I'm doing and doing the right work. So that's what I've done with legacy teams, is not gone really for a big bang Agile implementation, but choose a few techniques and let them use those techniques and then build on those as quickly as I can, but nevertheless let them understand just the fundamentals of quick feedback, of working with the business, or working with the customer. Those are the key aspects to me when working with a legacy team.
Excellent. Well, I think we're going to wrap it up here. I wanted to let everyone know that you will receive a follow-up email, and that will include a link to the recording of today's session. So you'll be able to go back and listen to it and share it with your colleagues as needed. We appreciate everyone's time today, and I hope you have a great afternoon.
Thank you all so much. This was delightful.